Greetings from the galaxy far, far away. This is Fandom Nation, and tonight we're bringing you Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3, our review of Star Wars Andor. I am your host, Johnny V. It is truly a pleasure to be here with you guys on this Wednesday night, or whenever you're listening to this, if not live. Joining me tonight, it's a roundtable review, so it's not always going to be the same people. But tonight is the regular Fandom Nation panel. Tonight, Sean, we got you. How you doing, buddy?
I would be a lot better if technology would not completely take a shit on me as we are trying to do one of these shows. But we're here, and I'm excited to talk about what we're talking about, and can't wait to dive into it.
Fantastic. What is not a Fandom Nation, or really any podcast we're doing without some sort of technical issue, though? All right, third man in the booth tonight. Randy, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Actually watched episodes 2 and 3 today, and so they're relatively fresh in my mind. I'm pretty excited about this. Obviously, just be getting the fact we're getting into some spoilery territory is going to be fun. But yeah, I'm ready to go, man.
That's right. Obviously, as Randy said, we are going to be, full review, full spoilers. So if you haven't yet watched the episodes, stop now, go back, watch the episodes, and then come back and listen to us talk about them. Or if you don't care, stick around. Either way, we appreciate you for being here and giving us your time to talk about this. All right, guys. First 3 episodes were in the books. Personally, I love the new format with 3 episode drops, but we'll talk about that a little more as we go on. But in this first arc, guys, here's your first challenge of the night, okay? You're gonna, if you haven't seen it yet, you can stay for this part, and hopefully this will sell you, okay? Because we're going to describe the first 3 episodes in 3 words or less. It's hard, it's challenging, but it's fun. So, in 3 words or less, Andor Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3. Sean.
Me first.
Yep.
Who chose this? I would say very gratifying.
All right, 2 words left us to spare. All right. Randy, 3 words or less, Episodes 1 through 3.
You're right. This is challenging. Man, 3 words or less. I will have to say, damn, this really is tough. I've actually never done this before. All right, I'll figure it out. Let's see. I'm gonna say, shit. It's like I have something in my head, and then it's like, no, that's more than 3 words. I can't. Okay. I think.
Fucking AK-47s.
That would be bad. All right, I'll be real generic with it, just saying that just a very strong start.
All right, good choice and excellent use of all 3 words. Me, I want 3 words, very easy. Way better introduction. Which, if you've listened to us long enough, you know that Season 1, first 2 episodes, I was out. I was done. I did not watch them again until just recently, in preparation for this series. We did the rewatches. If you stuck around with us after the Fandom Nation shows on Tuesday night, we rewatched a handful of episodes over the course of Season 1 over the last month and a half. So you'll know that as the season went on, I grew to like it more than I started out with. And the Season 2 introduction was way better than the Season 1 introduction because I didn't want to stop after the second episode this time around, which was a huge, huge plus. All right, guys. So we're going to start right in. We're going to start, obviously, with the very beginning, right? Because that's the sort of most important thing. We're going to break this down a little differently. We're not going to quite go episode by episode because there is a lot of back and forth. And since it is the three of us and we've all seen all three episodes, there's no need for us to sort of, parse and take time and, go back and forth over each of the three episodes. We're just going to sort of do it as a bulk review, and we're going to do it based on location. So each of the main locations of the episodes are what we're going to cover. I believe we ended up with 5 locations that we're going to cover over the course of the first 3 episodes. And there's really the only 5 locations that the series took us to so far. So we're going to start with the Imperial Test Facility. Obviously, that's the opening of episode 1, with Cassian stealing the test ship, which we don't have a designation of yet. We just know it's a TIE. Like I said last night, if you watched our live review, like our live discussion watch on Fandom Nation for the first episode, which we're going to do every week on Tuesday night, watch the first of the 3 episodes, and then we'll do them all on Wednesday. You'll know that I'm a starship guy. That's my thing. I love the ships. I have no idea what that was. I don't recognize that class of ship. We pretty much came to the conclusion that it's one of the many classes of TIE that Thrawn is testing during this era to try and improve upon it. I think it's somewhere between an interceptor and an aggressor, based on design. So, the Imperial Test Facility. What are your thoughts? Your initial thoughts on the Imperial Test Facility and the storyline contained within there. Randy, you go first.
So I definitely felt like like we said last night, that it's definitely something Thrawn cooked up. I thought it was really well done. They didn't need a lot of people in there to really kind of get the story going. I liked the way Cassian calmed down that one Imperial defector, essentially. Very charismatic, very caring. Like, there was a lot of personality behind it that we didn't really get to see in season 1, that we've seen how much in a year's time he's grown. Obviously, things go awry because clearly this wasn't the ship he was expecting to be stealing, and we got an action scene right off the bat, which I thought was great, as he taught himself how to fly this TIE Interceptor hybrid, and it was a lot of fun. I thought it really set the tone right away to give us an action piece that, honestly, I thought was great, since most series don't start off with an action piece like this.
Sean, what about you?
I thought the facility very much resembled, not the surroundings, like the terrain and stuff, but the facility itself from the outside resembled the facility that we see Galen die at in Rogue One. Um, so there was some consistency there with the design. Loved the look. The set design was incredible. You see a scene like that. The music in that particular scene is great. It feels like something you'd see in a Chris Nolan movie, that opening sequence. So in terms of spectacle and entertainment and quality, like it doesn't get any better. In terms of storytelling, you know, um, I don't think Andor has any intention of stopping and picking that woman up. I think he's using her and is just trying to get the hell out of there, essentially, with the ship. Even though he's talking all nice and stuff, I think it was a nod to his introduction into Rogue One, where it's like, yeah, thanks for helping me, but I have no intention of taking you with me. So I thought it was everything that happened. I forget the name of it, the planet that they're on there, but I thought it was top notch. Like, I don't know how they could have done any better with that opening sequence.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys, you hit the nail on the head. It opened fast and it opened intensely, and I think that's something that is very admirable. In a series like this, that is very action forward and very you know deep in the mud as far as storytelling goes. To just jump right into your face right away with a set piece like that was really good. It was very Star Wars, which is something else that is a huge plus for me. It felt, it would have felt in place in a scene in the original trilogy. You could just as easily see Han Solo being the one in that cockpit and trying to be like, how do I fly this thing? What do I do? What do I do? Flailing around, figuring it out, and failing successfully to escape. It is very Star Wars. I loved all of that. Using the guns inside and the stormtroopers and all of that was great, and it added in that edged Cassian that we see peek through in certain places, none more so than in Rogue One itself. But getting to see that edged Cassian again to remind you that he's not exactly a nice guy is always beneficial. Like you said, the look, the aesthetics were just off the charts. Everything about it was gorgeous for the look. Like visually, it was ripped off the big screen. Really, it was that good to look at, which is something that we have sort of missed a lot of in the Disney era of Star Wars for TV. With such reliance on stagecraft versus practicalities, that it's nice to see that again. It's nice to see that visual flair of Star Wars that we is sort of lost in other things. It had that imperial brightness to it, which I like. I like that look, that style. Everything about it felt great. The ship looked amazing, which is another thing that I think is, something that sort of gets slept on, is how good the ship itself looked and functioned. As a ship, I thought was great. I loved all of it, and Cassian completing the mission, successfully despite all of the things in front of him. I loved all of that. I definitely had the interior monologue of don't shoot a proton torpedo in a landing bay. You're going to blow yourself up. But other than that, I enjoyed it. It was fun, seeing the stormtroopers and all of that. And like I said, the aesthetics of it all, the storytelling was great there. And seeing Cassian sort of fail successfully to complete his mission, I thought was great. And very early Rebel. Like as we've established in Star Wars, they don't get wins yet. They just, it's not their style. They don't really get a big win for another few years yet. And this is just them sort of failing successfully to do these sort of escapades and missions and, cause chaos and calamity for the Empire. And I think it was great. I enjoyed it. It, it did a better job hooking me to what was to come than anything in the first 3 episodes of season 1, bar none. I was, if this had been season 1, episode 1, you'd have had me. There wouldn't have been a floundering of this isn't for me. I'm not enjoying this. Even with what came after it, it would have at least gotten me hooked enough to be like, okay, I'll give you a shot. This was good enough to pull me in. Now you got to keep me. Would it have successfully done that? Based on Andor himself, on Cassian, no, but Luthen and Mon Mothma would have done a very good job of keeping me interested. But as an opening, if someone hasn't watched season 1 and are just jumping in at this point, you definitely got something to hook you, I think, with that opening sequence in episode 1. Anything either if you want to add to that before we move on?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm good.
No? All right. Let's move on to the next part of this. And we're going to talk about the interim plan. In the notes, we have the location, but we'll save that for the end because that was one that, if I'm being honest, went over my head. I actually had to have Sean explain that one to me later because I was like, I don't get what I'm seeing here. I didn't understand it. It flew over my head, as I'm sure it did for a lot of people, where they actually were. Let's talk about the planets. Let's talk about Cassian's part in this 3-episode arc. His interactions with the fumbling. I almost said Republic. The fumbling rebellion cell there on the planet. It is doing the handoff of the ship that never occurs, to the chaos of that, to all of that. So, Sean, what were your first thoughts about Cassian's particular story in these first 3 episodes?
Well, my first thought was, wow, this guy, the planet that they land on, which we'll save the name, And when he's dealing with that rebel cell was, wow, this guy is not Cassian, but one of the fellas there is just as annoying in this show as he is in Superstore.
Which one was that, actually? I never thought to ask you that last night.
It's what's her face's adopted kid. Happens in like the last 2 seasons or whatever. Sandra's adopted kid.
Okay.
So, but you know, that planet, if we're talking about what's your favorite or least favorite locations, and I'm not talking set design or appearance, I'm talking about the events that happen in this first movie, if you will, or 3 episodes. What planet has the events that you enjoy most or enjoy least? I have to be honest, despite the reveal at the end, could have done without this. I thought this was one of the. I thought this was on par with some of the Cassian as a kid flashbacks. Not great until you get some of the older ones. It was my least favorite part of these 3 episodes. It didn't really do anything for me other than show that Cassian's way smarter than these fucking idiots, and it just sort of kept him away from the action on the other 2 planets.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think you're right. It was the most sort of unnecessary parts of the first 3 episodes. I said this last night. I think I said this. In myself, I thought that it was just what it was. It was just handcuffing Cassian to keep him off of the board for a few episodes and out of the story, which I felt was wholly unnecessary. Personally, even if you don't have him as part of the story, you could still not drag down a lot of the runtime of the episodes with these particular characters who brought nothing. They showed us the dysfunction of uh, you know of the rebels at this stage, in how dysfunctional everything is, and how all of the cells are basically, if you take out the top person, then everything, if you cut off the head, the snake dies. Is the rebellion at this stage? It's being held together by the Luthans and the Saw Gerreras of the world, who are keeping an iron fist and control over as much as they can. And you're right, it was wholly needlessly, to the point of I was laughing during the angry rock paper scissors conclusion to that story. Like, I couldn't I couldn't believe that that's how this story ended up. That we're playing rock paper scissors for control of a rebels. Like, what are we doing here? To the point where I actually, was like, oh, thank God, when the I'm calling it Triceracor, because it's a Rancor Triceratops. Or at least that's what it looked like to me. Showed up and proceeded to start eating everyone. That I was happy when that happened. Like, I was cheering for the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park again. I haven't done that in a long time. Not since Jurassic Park, really. It was silly, and not the fun kind of silly. Like, it was
Spoiler
good in the.
spoiler alert! It would have been fun to see the ghost of XR Coon come out and haunt all those fuckers.
But like, it was good it was fine for the first episode, but everything after that, when they kept coming back to it, was just like, why are we still here? Why are we still doing this? What? Come on now, this is ridiculous. Why do I want to watch this? Just, like I said, I was happy when the Triceracor started eating them. Uh, yeah. Randy, what about you? What did you think of the goings on of the dysfunctional rebel cell?
I mean, looking at it from your perspective, I can definitely see the frustration and why this wasn't needed. But also looking at it, you hit the nail on the head. This is really, I don't even think it was really meant for Cassian as much as it is for the audience to see just what the rebellion is currently, essentially, um, giving everybody just that chaos. And it's not even controlled chaos, it's just straight up chaos, where they're starving, they're hungry, they're willing to kill each other for food because their food source is dwindling, and the leaders are being taken out by themselves because of their ineptness. It's one of those things where it's just more of, but I think also if you think about it, it's showing Cassian what's going on as well, not just the audience. So he's pretty much privy to seeing these rebels who are dysfunctional, unlike what he's been a part of. That it gives him a broader understanding of, at least in my opinion, gives him a broader understanding of what needs to happen versus what he's seeing happening, which is another reason why I know he had zero qualms about just leaving them to their own devices, getting on his ship and getting out of there. Is it what was it a comedy of errors in that respect? Yes. Was it really necessary to show it? Not really, but it does, at least it gives you an idea of just how young the rebellion is, and that just how dysfunctional and unorganized they are. Obviously, when we get to, say, Star Wars Rebels, you have the different cells that are in better condition. They're taking their orders, they're doing their missions, and it's not as crazy as what we're seeing here. So clearly, over the next few arcs, we're going to see how the rebels come together and their cells start operating more cleanly. And I just think that's really the only point of what they were showing, is just to show just how really rough things were, only a year after season 1. I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. I could have lived without it, but that's not always going to happen. That's always going to happen in any series. There's always going to be something that is unnecessary. There's always going to be something that not everybody's going to like, and there's always going to be that one person that goes, "That was fucking awesome, man! I loved it," and you're like, "Kudos to you. I'm glad you enjoyed it." But you're right. It just kept Cassian off the board longer than he needed to be. But at least we all know he got back on the board and at least had some fun. Well, I wouldn't say fun, but some adventure in the end.
That's a very fair way to put it. As we were watching the episodes last night, in the chat, some of us, and by chat I mean the Facebook chat for the staff here, we were sort of alluding to things we were noticing. And as we finished episode 2, some of us around the same time, Randy, not until today, but Sean finished the second episode just shortly in and around the same time I did, dropped a message in the chat about the reveal at the end of the episode. And I'm sitting there scratching my head, trying to figure out exactly what he's talking about. And I had that sort of, that looks familiar, but thought nothing of it, and didn't realize it at the fact until I messaged him, about a half hour after we finished. I'm like, what reveal were you talking about? Like, I did it, either it went over my head or I just straight missed it. And it went over my head. Sean, tell us the reveal that you noticed at the end of episode 2.
I'll do you one better. I'll tell you 2 more reveals too.
Oh.
So when what's her name? Luthen's partner makes it back to Coruscant and opens the shop up there. And I'm only bringing this up. I know we're not at Chandrilla yet, but I'm gonna get rid of it now because it happens at the end of that episode, and we're on Coruscant for a blink of an eye in terms of her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When she walks in, season 1, that was a big Easter egg spot, see what you spot. Well, in this one, we see some of the stuff from season 1, but there's 2, maybe even more, but there's 2 really clear new additions that stood out to me, specifically because I just watched Attack of the Clones with my kiddo getting ready for this weekend. And Plo Koon, or another, person from that species, they're like facial stuff, the eyes and the mouthpiece and whatever is in there. But specifically, and hers is one of Padme's crowns from Attack of the Clones is in that shop. So from when she's riding the public transport with Anakin to Naboo from Coruscant when he's protecting her. So that was a couple of notable things that stood out for me. And then the obvious one that my tired friend above me somehow, flew over his head because he's played video games on this planet.
Recognized it. I'll say this: I recognized it, but it was more of a, "Oh, that looks familiar."
There's
I didn't put two
nothing
and two together.
nothing at all in the episode that gives a hint in either of the first two episodes that gives a hint where you are, and it's the only one that like the planet name doesn't come up for. Why is that? We find out that we're on Yavin 4.
And that reveal was Stark like, oh my, it's exactly what. As soon as he said it and typed it in, I'm like, oh, I feel so stupid right now because yeah, it's pretty obvious once you spell it out. And like I said, I recognized it. It had that. Oh, that looks familiar, but I'm thinking it's just one of those throwaway, visual sight gags that like, oh, it looks familiar. It looks Star Wars. You're supposed to recognize it, but not recognize it. And then you point it out, and it's like, oh, that's painfully obvious. How did that not register?
One thing that flew over my head was the other ship that they were held up in. I didn't know until he kicks the box open for the gun, and I'm looking at the gun, and like the ship was bothering me the entire time. It's like, this looks familiar, but I can't pinpoint it. It's his ship. It's his ship from the first season,
You're right.
and it's his gun from the first season. That's how he knew it was there, and it's what Brasso and Bix and the others escape on at the end of the first season.
You're right. Now that you mention it, yeah, you're right. I just chalk that up to a familiarity of the gun being the same, like sort of as a Han's always got his blaster,
It
right?
had been bugging me, but I couldn't put it together. And then when it was that blaster, I'm like, oh fuck, that's Cass's ship.
Now that you say it, I can see it. Like I can like the side ramp walk up and the feet. It's like no, you're absolutely. That is exactly what that is. Which makes sense when he refers, prior about his relationship with is it Mina, the dead leader,
I think her name is Rika.
something like that.
Yeah.
That he'd been helping them, all along makes even more sense when you realize you have my ship. All right. Now that the cat's out of the bag, we know we're on Yavin 4. I think we've covered everything we need to cover from the Yavin 4 escapade. There isn't really anything else uh, necessary there. So let's move forth to the next part of the episode, which the next location of the episode we're going to talk about. It isn't so much a location, so much as who's in it, because I don't recall them specifying where it was. I don't think it was actually on the planet they're discussing, unless I missed the tag. We just know it's a facility where they're discussing it. I don't remember them actually giving a location for where they were, just that they were meeting about. So we'll talk about what they were discussing. So we're talking about the Gorman Council, discussing how to subjugate and take over the planet and its resources and its people and make the world not scared and freak out and rise up against them. I'm gonna go first on this one. I loved it because, when we got the announcement previously in between seasons that Ben Mendelsohn was coming back and would be, taking up the character he played in Rogue One again as Krennic, I assumed that he would be, a mid-season guy, someone who shows up for the back half as we get closer to the events of Rogue One, which we know we're going to get closer to throughout the course of this season. I assumed he'd be someone that comes in around the halfway point. Based on how the timeline is jumping, sort of made sense for that to be his jumping off point. But no, he is right here, right off the jump, right in episode 1. I loved it. I love the interactions of the characters in there discussing how to use the spoken word and storytelling to control the narrative in eerily topical way. Um, it just it, I said this last night. I like seeing how the underbelly of the Empire works. We get to see the Empire with the Iron Fist and everything else. We see the Empire through actions, but here we're seeing the Empire through thoughts, how they plan, what the thought process is for how we can use you know news and stories and whispers and things like that for how we can control the people. I love seeing that. I love the characters on this particular panel. Um, after the mess that was season 1. I don't know how those two managed to get on a panel of this importance. Um, that's one of those things that I'm like, wait, you just fucked up real bad. How are you here? But that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, the Gormans, they need the Gorman crystals, right? For plating of the shields, the energy ran. They needed the Gorman plating. And they can't really take what
Death
they
Star
need.
business.
Yeah, Death Star business. Then basically to take what they need would cripple the entire planet. So how do they go about doing that if they can't find a substitute? Um, like I said, I love that. I love seeing this side of the Empire because it's not a side we get to see very often. Yeah, we see the Empire action. We see the actions of the Empire, and marching en masse, and taking over by force. I enjoy seeing them try and how to take over without force, through words and actions, and I love seeing that side of it. Sean, what about you? The Gorman Council? What are your thoughts, feelings?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the way it was presented. I really liked the old clips, and that they didn't just go with a basic hollow. And um, Mendelsohn is great in almost anything he does, including Krennic. And um, I forget the actress's name that plays Dedra, but like she's great too. Same with the fellow who played Qyburn in Game of Thrones. Um, it was eerie because it very much relates to real life and how people of power decide the fates of others just for greater gain, and definitely relates to some of the not so fun things about life.
Randy, what about you?
So yeah, I definitely enjoyed that piece. I love the old like wartime / Starship Troopers propaganda video that got played, and 'cause it was like it was just that feel of it and the way it was voiced, and I'm just like, man, this feels like Starship Troopers almost. And I'm just waiting for someone to say, I'm doing my part. Um,
I made that joke in my head last night when we were watching it.
But ultimately, you're right. It gives you that a look inside of just the thought process of like, what do we need to do? Obviously, when I first thought about it, I was like, oh, are they trying to farm kyber crystals for the laser of the Death Star? No, this is the calcite crystals that's clearly going to be used as shielding the generators from the blast from the laser for the Death Star. So it's clearly, I mean, Sean made the comment last night, this thing's pretty much ready to go. They just haven't gotten it working yet. And it's
Imagine how pissed Palpatine is. Death Star sitting there 95% built for like half a decade and can't do shit with it. It's a big hotel.
Yeah, I mean, and I also I love the look on everybody's faces where it's like, oh yeah, I've been talking to Palpatine, and then basically if this doesn't get done, you answer directly to him, and I'm just like, okay, I'm digging this because it just shows just how powerful Krennic is, and it shows just how fearful everybody is of the Emperor still. Which so it's like, I'm going to tell on you if you don't do your job. But it's interesting to see how sharp Deirdre is, and how she already, the minute that everything started, she already had a plan in her head what they needed to do. I thought that was, and I think that's kind of, you're talking about, how do you guys get there? The fact that her ability to like formulate plans that quickly and be able to speak her mind very well, because as we saw later in the 3 episodes of just how well spoken she is, especially when she wants to get her way. It's one of those things where her character growth in a year is pretty impressive, but also it shows you just how strong she truly is. And I can't wait to kind of see what type of growth she goes through, since we've seen some of the stuff in the trailers and for future episodes of just kind of like her mental state at times. So I'm really curious to see what happens. But overall, I thought this really was very well done. I love seeing Mendelsohn back. I love how ruthless feeling Krennic is. Like, he's not raising his voice. He's not making any real threats or anything like that. It's just that commanding presence of, go ahead, piss me off, see what happens. I love that about Krennic.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, it was fun seeing that side of the Empire, which is we don't get to see often enough. Um, I guess let's move on from the Gorman Council, and now we're going to take up with the survivors of season one, who have now relocated to Mina Rao. And that's where we're going to take up the discussion of the next portion, which is their second to last, actually, for this. So, Mina Rao. Randy, we're going to start with you. What'd you think about the goings on of Mina Rao?
Obviously they're trying to lay low, which I get. Um, it's probably one of the better hiding jobs that or any rebel cell could do when you think about it. Uh, Obviously, you knew things were gonna kind of take a turn. Obviously, Bix is still has some PTSD from her interrogation with the Empire in season one, and it's very very understandable considering what was done to her. Uh, so I know obviously that's going to play a part probably until her end, whenever that may be. Um, but no, it's great to catch up with the characters. It it was great to just kind of see that they're doing the best they can. Obviously, once the Empire shows up, things get a little hectic. By the Obviously one of the, I wouldn't call it, I would say almost disturbing, but almost kind of on par for what we've seen the Empire being so far in the series. Uh, just Basically the one Imperial officer assaulting Bix. That I was like, you know what? That's a side of the Empire we'd never seen before. But you know what? I can guarantee you, it's probably stuff that happened all the time. And it was just that dark, seedy side you normally don't get to see. And I'm happy that Gyor decided to go there with it, because when it comes to occupations and things like that, that's going to happen, which is unfortunate. But it's just the ugly side of things. And then obviously the ending there, I'll let definitely let Sean expand upon it. But I'll just say this: the very end, showing Cassian after picking them up, like the intensity and the pain in his eyes, I actually teared up because of it, because you could feel how much he was hurting by the end of that, how much what he saw just completely just crushed him. And yeah, that was a hell of a way to end, episode 3 on that, for that planet, and just a bit of a downer, but it just kind of like, okay, now I want to see how they bounce back. So, and that's kind of that's what I'm kind of hoping to see next week, is we get the bounce back and year 2, I guess, so to speak. And yeah, like I said, I'll let Sean expand upon the ending for episode 3 there.
John?
Oh no, sir, you're going first on this one.
Oh, I'm going first on this one. Okay, you're that into this that you're demanding the clear. Okay, all right, I respect it. It was about what I expected it to be. Watching them try and lay low and not get noticed, and seeing the Empire descend on them in sort of an, oh shit, something's gonna happen here. Again, like I said, during the course of this episode, there were bits and pieces where Sean and I were exchanging messages back and forth, and both of us were pretty much like, this is not going to have a happy ending, and well, clearly we were correct. But it's not quite the ending I expected. I'll admit that honestly, I was 1,000% certain that Will was going to be the one to meet his demise by being an idiot, for lack of better phrasing, going off to say goodbye to, the girl. It was just like, you're gonna get yourself killed, or you're gonna get someone else killed.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, um, But no, it was about what I expected it to be. Seeing sort of this little cell, do their thing and just try and stay unassuming and unnoticed and work together and not be part of the problem. And then seeing the Empire, be the Empire, the scummy side of the Empire. In the well, we know they're illegals, that they just do the work. And like, okay, that tracks. It's what you do about it, and his actions and leading to the events of the ending of their stay on right. I enjoyed it. Um, it was fun. It was what I expected it to be. Really, there weren't any surprises during that. It was very, I don't want to say predictable, but it was very sort of by the letters. There were no big left turns. There were no big curveballs. Everything kind of played out the way you sort of initially expected it to, and that's fine. There are going to be story arcs that are like that are just exactly what you expect them to be, and that's perfectly fine from a writing standpoint. Not every arc or storyline contained within needs to be topsy turvy and make you stand on your head and go, "What's happening next?" Sometimes it's okay to be predictable and then have that predictability pay out in the way you expect, so that you can save the curveballs for other stories. Um, and there really wasn't anything surprising. I wasn't even surprised when the guy sold them out. That seemed to be something that was sort of building towards what was going to happen there, and it all sort of played out exactly as I expected it to. Yet again, B was sort of the one playing on the emotions there. When he got sent up the hill, and presumably Cassian then went to pick him up at the end. But we didn't see that, so I guess we'll have to wait until next week to find out what happens with him. But it played out exactly as it was intense. Watching her fight at the Imperial. Was he a lieutenant? I think in the facility. It was what I expected it to be. It was an intense battle. It was more intense than I expected, which I thought was a good thing. It was definitely a fight for survival from her, which was good. From a viewing standpoint, it was a very intense, very emotional scene that I really enjoyed from that standpoint. And of course, seeing her come out victorious in the end and give the officer his comeuppance for being that level of douche was fun. And you kind of expected something like that from the first time you heard him speak. You knew he was a sleazeball. You knew something was going to happen, and like I said, it played out pretty much exactly as I expected it to. There were really no curves. You could feel Cassian's right even before he escaped. You sort of had that feeling of, well, he's just going to show up and save the day. And that's fine. It happened exactly that way, but obviously, events happened and weren't entirely surprising to me. Sean,
I was gonna say before Sean goes, how badass is that tie? It was like a video game. How it was locking on to everybody. That was great.
the fact
I
he
love
learned the
that.
weapon system so much, sort of like right when he needed to, was very intuitive. I guess you'd say. Uh, I got a kick out of that personally. Like, how you could barely fly this thing the last time you were in the cockpit, and now you can use the weapon system like an old pro. Okay, but you can move past that one pretty quickly in the grand scheme of things. Sean,
Fuck this planet. Fuck Tony Gilroy. Fuck y'all. Fucking killing Brasso like that on me, you pieces of shit. One of my favorite characters from the first season. Take Will. Why not Will? Take him. Knock him off first. Fuck, take Bix even. Not Brasso. Ugh. Like, look. And this is without reading spoilers. Did not. Stayed away from them. Um, I knew in my heart Brasso had to die before Rogue One. Just the way I know in my heart that I feel like all the others are going to die or have to go somewhere before Rogue One. Brasso being gone in our first arc, that hurts. That one stung. It stung Cassian. It was emotional. Definitely added weight to the first arc. And I know it's the rebellion and like this planet even like it's made a comment about it twice on air. It reminded me of the Anne Frank story and the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands and um, it feels like that. It feels also not too dissimilar to current events in the world and um, it's heavy. I thought the way they designed that planet, what we've seen of it anyways, did a good job of making it feel overwhelming. Like, hey, this is the planet. There's not much here. It's wheat. That's it. Um, maybe there's some terrain somewhere else, obviously, but um, they just did a good job making it. Yeah, you're living a secluded, incredibly simple life, and I thought they did a fantastic job of presenting that in the show. And the Imperial makes mention of it. Fuck that guy too, by the way. Kudos to them for willing to go to such a sensitive topic area, but that guy fucking got it. The only thing I'm going to correct is Johnny got one thing wrong, and that is why this show, unfortunately, even is probably the closest thing we're ever going to get to Star Wars version of Game of Thrones. There's so many little nuances in the storytelling that if you're not paying attention, if you look away for a second, you're going to miss something. I looked down at the hockey game a couple of times, and when I was rewatching episode 3 today with Jade, because she couldn't stay up for it last night, I noticed a few things. And this was one of them. He didn't get sold out. Brasso and company didn't get sold out. When he's down on his knees, he looks up and gives that guy a look like, shut the fuck up, I'm covering for you. And the guy gives him like a nod. So they didn't get sold out, much like what would happen back during the Nazi regime. But I thought, it's one of the reasons I love this show. Again, it's the closest thing Star Wars has to Game of Thrones. Hopefully, they decide to do another project like this down the road. Doubt it with the costs and stuff, but just obviously, I'm upset about Brasso, but everything they did here on this, what is it, Mina Rao? Is that the name of the planet? Thought it was presented very well, and I hope that's not it for B2. Like, cool if he, gets to live a peaceful life now and doesn't have to be through. I mean, he's going to torture himself anyway. But I would have hoped Cassian would go get him. But I'm just not sure. They're rebels on the run, and he's an extremely wanted person. But so are the others now too. And do you risk getting caught by going for B2? Here's my guess. No, and there's going to be a chance reunion somewhere down the line.
Well, I'll have to wait and see that. I hope, like I said, that he does go back because I want to see him in K2. That's like, I feel like I need
question,
that.
Johnny, if you want to read it.
Okay, Jerry chiming in here in the live chat. Maybe the controls were just similar enough to previous ships Andor flew in the past that Andor thought, oh, it's like blank ship a few X years ago, and he just went from there. I mean, for the weapon system, that's entirely possible. I think he obviously established
he was also
that
in space for who knows how long, at least a couple of days. So he had time to brush up.
I can believe the weapons, like that in regard to the weapon system, because it did sort of seem to be very similar to basically every other weapon system, as far as the heads up display and locking on and all of that did look pretty much the same as any other TIE fighter or even the X-wings that we've seen in that regard. So yeah, you're probably right. As far as the weapon system went, that's probably pretty much just what it was. The weapon system was the same once he figured out how to fly it, and once he sort of taught himself how to do that, which clearly he did, because he was doing some pretty slick maneuvers flying around the surface there, which is much harder to do than open space piloting, as we've seen in other Star Wars. endeavor. So yeah, you're probably right about that, Jerry. For the record, it was noticed. I did notice the interplay between Brasso and the other guy in there. I just wasn't sure if that was something they were going to pay off later or not. So I just wanted to, leave
My
that
guess is
out
we're
there
never going to see that place
in the
again.
obvious. I wouldn't expect it either, but for obviousness' sake, from another sort of view, he sort of sold himself out at that point. So
I think he
once
knew they were fucked.
absolutely, he knew they were fucked. But it's hard to say how fucked from the Imperial side until he
Fuck
sort
them
of
for
did
killing
that too.
Brasso. I'm still not over.
I
It's going to
agree. It
take
was
some time.
definitely not what I expected. I did expect more from the death scene, and I kind of had hoped that they'd take his body, to give him a proper burial somewhere.
I'm glad they did, though. It added realism to it. There's no
It
time.
absolutely did. It absolutely did. To the point that I was sort of expecting him to launch a torpedo at the ship to sort of give him a burial by fire. Uh, you know, set the field on fire and give him a burial by fire, a Viking funeral, if you will.
I mean, when they did that semi slow mo, that one stormtrooper just stepping up and taking aim, I was like, oh god, they're gonna actually show it happening here, and then clearly not. But it was this that infinitesimal moment where you're just like, oh shit, this is it.
Yeah,
Interestingly enough, haven't seen that scene twice now. When it slows down and he's raising the rifle, he does let out a shot, and it's right after the shot. It cuts to a different angle back to Cass. So they do show the shot that kills him. They just don't show the shot that hits him.
They don't shot hitting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which now we get to play the game of, is it bad aim Imperial, or was he actually aiming at him? Did he just get hit by a stray shot that was supposed to be for
Turns out
Cassian?
it's the 501st on punishment duty.
All right, guys. Unless either of you have anything else you want to add about Mina Rao. Every time we said that, I've almost said Fenrau. Every time I've said that planet name, I've almost said Fenrau. Even looking at the notes when Sean sent them to me earlier, I'm like, I'm going to say Fenrau. At some point, I'm going to say Fenrau. Because that's what's in my head right away when you think of the Rao name. It's like Fenrau. Oh, Fenrau. No, Mina Rao. So either of you have anything more you want to add to Mina Rao?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good.
Sean, I assume you're good.
Yep.
All right, that leads us to the last portion of the story, which is obviously the most meaty from story standpoint, outside of Brasso's death. Obviously, that's the emotional heart of these first 3 episodes, but the story heart of these 3 episodes is the goings on of the rebel backbone. I of course mean Luthen and Mon Mothma, and the goings on of Chandrilla and the brief interlude to Coruscant we see during the course of this. So, Sean, we're going to start with you. Coruscant, Chandrilla, Mon Mothma, Luthen. Thoughts?
So, let me get this one out of the way real quick. Dedra's a badass. Because let me tell you, I've been on, not with my own mother necessarily, because she wasn't exactly like that by any means, but I've been with people whose mothers are not understanding at all. And to watch Dedra put that fucking bitch in her place.
Oh, yeah.
Made me feel quite good in the jimmies. Hashtag P-Gate. Yeah, no, I'm like, it got me a little excited. Chandrilla, like, it's the driving force of these first 3 episodes, even though it's not an action piece. The story, the chess pieces being moved around the board is very Game of Thrones like, and there's just so much that happens. It's everybody on this planet is incredible, by the way. Mon Mothma's performance, Perrin's performance, even the daughter. Wow, what a bitch! I wish you were drunk. And the crazy girl who fights Arya in Game of Thrones. I forget her name in this. Is it Val? Might be Val. I think it's Val.
Yeah.
just at Luthen too. Like you're hanging off of every word that comes out of Luthen's mouth after season one, right? So, and why not? Just one, visually, it's stunning. The dynamic at play, the wedding, the celebration, Luthen, not able to turn it off, always hunting for more information. um, he has no off button. He has no ability to stop. He is, a different type of obsessive than Saw Gerrera. Um, but boy, the one of the biggest, and I'm not kidding when I say this, it's one of the probably it's one of the more dynamic scenes I've ever seen in Star Wars. Is Luthen's talking to Mothma, and Mothma's going on about Tay, who was trying to help her last season. For those of you that don't know, who haven't read the books, I just read Reign of the Empire, and basically, in order to save her life um, from an earlier issue that she had with the Empire in the early days after Revenge of the Sith, she lies about having an open affair with him, which is why Perrin mentions, "Oh, well, there's your boyfriend." Is everybody in the galaxy thinks those two have already had an affair for the last 2 decades, despite that not happening. She threw herself on the bus or under the bus in order to save her life. So that is a pretty important detail that you're not getting out of the TV show. That probably would have added a little more to it. I think they did a decent job of trying to catch you up a little bit on that, but not as good as they could have. But that scene, fellas, where you know Luthen's like, "You need to be protected," and she's like, in disbelief and like the dread, the performance by Genevieve O'Reilly there when she's like, "I'm not sure what you're saying." It's like, and Luthen's just like, "Oh, you know, how nice for you," or whatever. Meanwhile, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill this guy. He's a loose end. He can end the rebellion in the blink of an eye. And sure enough, we see Cinta, and which is, you know what, the Chandrilla stuff. Believe it or not, and I couldn't make this reference years ago. Very Godfather like.
I could see that.
I'm glad you've joined the common, person and finally watched those movies after 20 plus years telling you to watch the goddamn movies.
I love Chandrilla. I thought it was the far and away the best part, despite there not being action per se. Just the presentation of everything that happened there. It was far and away the best part of the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, like you said, you hit on pretty much all of it for me personally. There was so much going on there in such relative littleness, like there was so much, yet so little, if that makes sense. And I loved it. I loved Mon's, seeing her go through the gambit of emotions, dealing with her daughter and going through it all to the, just getting drunk and dancing while basically everything she's built is starting to crumble around her.
Really quick
Was
note on the dancing thing, because that song plays for probably a good 5 or 6 minutes at
too
the end of the
damn long.
episode. It's a fantastic piece of music. I completely disagree with what you're saying here, and I actually got a fucking rant about it, not necessarily towards Johnny, but towards both sides that are going on about this song. There's the, "Oh, it's not Star Wars enough." Fuck off. Because if you've ever gone into a certain bars in Knights of the Old Republic or Star Wars: The Old Republic, there's music that's not all that dissimilar to that.
Yeah.
Two,
It's Star Wars dance club music. It is what it
two.
is.
Then there's the other side. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Like this is what they needed. This is different. This is uh energized. I'm just like, this is the fucking song, the exact same fucking song they play when he's looking for his sister at the beginning of the pilot episode. We've heard the song before. It just doesn't play for 5 or 6 minutes, so you hear the whole thing. But we have it's not. Ugh. It bugs me when people talk out their ass like they know what they're talking about when in fact they don't.
For me, it's I don't care about its place and stuff. Like, yeah, okay, I just don't like that type of music. That's just a me thing. I don't like dance club music. I never have. If you've been around here long enough, you know about my absolute hate for the Star Wars trivia theme because Sean picked dubstep specifically to piss me off. Uh, because I hate that type of music. Electric dance club music. I hate that kind of stuff. I've never liked it, never enjoyed it, and I don't care what it is I'm watching. I don't like it. If I'm watching a teenage, like a slasher coming of age story, and they go to the club and they dance to the EDM music, I don't like that either. Even though it's absolutely placed there. The procedural, FBI, CSI type shows. You go to the club and somebody gets murdered because they're doing drugs. It's the electronic dance. I hate that shit. I hate it. 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 I hate it so goddamn much. That's why I hate that music at the end of the episode, because it's that kind of music. Not that it doesn't belong there, because it
No, I
fit.
thought it was perfect for Mon Mothma and what she's
It
going through.
fit.
You
It fit
mentioned her
perfectly
getting
with the vibe they
loaded
were
there.
going. This is a
Trying to
How many
Teenagers.
shots in a row did she take?
Well,
3 or
it's a
4.
teenager's arranged marriage. This is the kind of music they're gonna vibe to. Like, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm not
Fuck
vibing to that
teenagers.
stuff
I
no
was
more.
vibing to that shit.
Well, yeah, but you have the most eclectic music taste of anyone I have ever met in my life. You will go from the fucking hurdy-gurdy man to fucking electronica dubstep shit and two shakes of a. I have gotten more culture shock listening to you control the radio in a car than I have in my entire life.
Standing in the sun with a popsicle.
The people rest. But no, I mean, like, it just. I loved it. I loved everything that went on there with Mon Mothma and Luthen, and all of the the accessory characters to what was going on with them, building up to the moment where he gets secreted away, and it's like, oh no, this is not going well for you, sir. um for me, the part about the Chandrilla stuff that really got me the most was the throwback, the nod that I got, that I loved, which was the statue, and the mention of it, and the fact that it was stolen by the Rakatans, thousands of
It's the
years ago.
second time in this series, by the way, they have brought them up. The first being Luthen's necklace he loans to Cass in season 1.
Mhm.
That's 2 very intentional mentions now.
So I love the use of the Rakatans. I think it's one of those species that doesn't get the love outside of those of us who are Knights of the Old Republic nerds. So I loved it. I love bringing them into the canon in a big way, tying them to the history of Chandrilla and all of that. But yeah, everything about it, the machinations of Luthen, and like you said, he can't turn it off, and and Mon Mothma going through what should otherwise be sort of a momentous and monumental occasion for a parent at their child's wedding, being turned into something that's sort of being forced upon her by culture and by necessity. Just seeing that dichotomy in her is, I love it. I love the emotions we get from Mon, with both her personal relationships and professional relationships with these people, was so great. I loved it all. I loved every bit of it, and you know I look forward to seeing how that plays out. And I'm sure we're going to see Mon Mothma's hangover in the next episode. I hope. I think that'll be funny.
No, you won't.
I don't. I know that, but damn it, I want to.
We're jumping ahead a year, my friend.
I still want to see Mon Mothma's hangover, or at least hear it
Now
mentioned.
that would be a hell of a hangover.
I want to see, like, at the very least, mention it somehow. Like, I haven't had this big a headache since after her wedding type story. Something like that. I'd love to hear a joke like that. But yeah, I loved it. I loved everything about the Chandrilla Coruscant portion of the story. Like you said, it was the best part because it had the most meat on its bones from a story perspective. It's the part that is going to push the story forward most going forward, and I'm excited for, outside of the Gorman Prime Council, which obviously is going to play a big part in this. And outside of that, this is the heart of the rebellion. Randy, what about you? What did you think of Chandrilla and Coruscant?
So I definitely enjoyed it a lot. Obviously, when it comes to Coruscant, when Deidre doing her thing, and now I didn't get as excited as Sean did about that, but yeah, I was. It was nice to see her just pretty much put his mother in her place where she deserved, because that's just one of those things where it's just like, how many, you can only whoop somebody when they're down so much before it's just like, okay. But it also kind of clues you in on just how much Deidre cares about this guy. So I think there's going to be more to it where that we'll get to see in future episodes. As far as Chandrilla goes, uh, Genevieve O'Reilly just knocks it out of the park. Just the running the gambit emotions that she had, just from uh, disgust to guilt to grief to happiness. Like it's all there. The drama unfolding before her as she's trying to wrap her head around what she's done, even though it's a year later, it still haunts her. And interesting enough that I didn't even think about this until now, her kid's name being Lita was very foreshadowing in season 1, because essentially Lita is short for Lolita, which would, we know usually what Lolitas are. And so basically having a kid married off, that, like, the name of her kid basically foreshadowed this was going to happen in season 1. Um, Obviously, yes, it's a little, there was, the kid basically getting whatever the kid wanted was one thing. I mean, that's what happens. I guess what's happen when you're rich. I don't know. I've never had money, so for them to be like, yeah, she's spoiled, she gets what she wants, and it's just like, okay, figures. But and I wouldn't expect like a 14 or 15-year-old boy to be all like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hold your hand. I don't think that's how it works back at that age, but I could be wrong. But ultimately, I mean, those are just minor things compared to watching how Perrin acted through the whole thing. That we got to see, like, a different personality, a different side of him, which we didn't really get to see in season 1. And I thought that was great. I thought it was nice to see, like, I wouldn't call it the showman, but just the, outward, gregarious, happy, just very welcoming, even though we know, I'm sure there's still a bunch of stuff going around his head similar to her, to Mon Mothma. But it's just, there were just times when you could see them connect. There was like a million words going between them, just from a look. It's like, I can't believe we're doing this, but here we are. Luthen doing Luthen things. I mean, we could put that dude in the Head and Shoulders commercial with Troy Polamalu and be like, never not working, because that's pretty much what that is. He's always on the clock, no matter what. I mean, there was a couple of things where you just kind of see him turn his head a little bit, hear something, and he perks up like, oh, I might need to go over here and interject and listen in. It's amazing how disarming of a character he is, but when like the real reason what he's doing and why he's doing it's just like, you slick son of a bitch. Because no one's going to suspect this guy the way he acts in public. You would not suspect him of being basically one of the big head members of a rebel cell. You just wouldn't. But, and I could say poor Tay, but his wife leaves him. He gets drunk as shit, spills the beans to Perrin about something that we never find out, but we get hints about it because Mon seems very upset about it. And then, yep, he's going to get offed. Yeah, well, you open your, snitches get stitches. Well, in this case, body bag shot into space. But ultimately, it was fun to a degree. I mean, a lot of the drama happened here. A lot of story and exposition happened here. I did like at the end, Mon just getting shithoused and then dancing to the point of basically to try to forget or try to internalize everything, but just to let herself go to the music and dance, because it's either that or basically scream and have a breakdown in front of everybody. I mean, that's what I got out of that.
We'll just count it. Like, she just married off her daughter, and despite their, tension-filled relationship. There's that. There's issues with the rebellion. There's the thing with Tay. There's the normal pressures of being a senator. Um, I thought, and I'm going to skip ahead a bit here because we do need to get ready to shut this thing down. But um, Genevieve O'Reilly blew me away in this 3-episode arc. As much as I loved some of the other characters, Luthen included, she was my MVP, Mon Mothma, the first 3 episodes.
Well, you jumped us there a couple seconds. And that's all right. MVP for the first 3 episodes. Sean, you obviously just did yours. Randy, who was your MVP for the first 3?
Given the meat of just like the story and how she added to everything and pushed things along and kind of gave us more intrigue, and in the process, feel bad for her, but go, you did this to yourself. Obviously, Mon Mothma was the MVP because there's so much there just for her that you almost could have thought the show was about her versus Cassian.
It's a definitely unarguable fact. Mon Mothma was a great part of this, but for me, I think it's Luthen again. His intensity, his ability to play both sides of the coin. Go from being the art dealer to the shadow broker. In literally 2 breaths. Is again, it's amazing. It's great work. So he is my MVP for the first 3. Favorite scene from the first 3 episodes. I'm going to kick that off. Obviously, it's the dinner scene. Seeing her put his mother in her place like that, it was just, I loved every bit of it because it felt so relatable from a certain perspective. Like Sean said, we've all sort of had that relationship with either a girlfriend or boyfriend or significant other's parents where things are going off the rails, and we've all wanted to do almost exactly that at one time or another in our lives and put someone in their place like that. It was great. I loved it. I loved the humor, the emotion. Seeing him sort of wake up from that little nap he took there and hear them laughing and be like, what is happening? I loved that whole sequence. I thought it was amazing, and it was a nice light touch around otherwise intense and serious moments. Randy, what was your favorite scene?
So, like you said, there's a lot of good scenes, but I would say for me, like the scene that kind of made me kind of perk up the most was the Gorman Council scene, just because of, like I said, there's something about the propaganda video that just kind of was like brought me back to just some stuff I've either played, watched, whatever, and that resonated with me. And just seeing Krennic again and seeing Krennic at his best, so, or worse, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, that was definitely why that was my favorite scene.
Sean?
It's Mon Mothma and Luthen. The oh, so nice for you, when he's basically telling her, hey, I'm going to kill this guy because it has to happen.
It's definitely hard to argue about that. Chat, those of you watching, if you're watching us live, if you're watching this later, tell us down in the comments below who was your MVP of the first 3 and what was your favorite scene in those episodes. Tell us in the comments down below. Of course, after you give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe, all that fun stuff. All right, we're coming down to the back end now. So, Sean, I'm going to turn this over to you because, as always, you, I'm sure, have some convoluted scale out of 10. We know that it's a Stormtrooper scale this time. So, tell us the scale. Tell us how it works. What's the scale? What are we rating these episodes? Yeah. There's your scale, guys. We're ranking this out of 10 Stormtroopers. Are we ranking individual episodes or the whole arc? You didn't quite.
We'll do
specify.
both. We'll do both because I think that they're not necessarily the same thing, in my opinion.
Okay. So I'm gonna start this. Wow. Well, I'm gonna just, for the first episode, I'm going to go with slightly right center Stormtrooper. That's at 6. For the second episode, I think I'm going to give that beer drinking Stormtrooper. And for the third episode, we're going to come in at pot smoking stormtrooper for me, and for the overall arc, we're going to stay at beer trooper. So
I
that's
have no
a
idea
six.
what that.
That's a 6, 7, 8 with a 7 for the whole arc.
All right, well, I'll go next, and I will say when I'm, reviewing these, I'm reviewing these or rating these in comparison to our other Star Wars ratings to date. What that we did for Acolyte and Ahsoka. So I'm comparing them to them, not just Andor alone, which is probably going to make mine seem a little high. But for episode 1, I'm giving it a 8.5. For episode 2,
That's a pot smoking stormtrooper for those watching the scale. That's pot
episode,
trooper and a half.
episode 2, I'm giving a 7.
That's beer drinking stormtrooper.
Episode 3, I'm giving a 9.
And that is toque wearing stormtrooper.
Now, for me, I think it works better as like a movie. If you were to watch everything together as a 2.5 hour, 2 hour and 20 minutes, I think it was, movie. I think it works much better that way than episodic. I think it's clearly designed to be seen in 4 parts. So as an arc, I would say, honestly, I'm giving it a 9. And I think there's room to improve.
All right, so toque. We're toque for the arc. Okay, Randy, what are your thoughts on these 3 episodes and the arc on this convoluted scale of stormtroopers?
Okay, so the way for me, this is going to be, I'm going to say the arc as a whole, and then they'll have my 3 individuals. But the reason I say it this way is it's not an average of the 3 episodes, because I'm going to have it as a review as
That's
a
fair.
standalone versus arc.
Mhm.
For the arc, I'm giving it an 8.5. It's a good starting point. There's room to improve. I know there's going to be better, and I realize this is more of a reintroduction of the characters, basically what's happened a year later, and basically giving them their motivation for the future arcs. So good jumping off point. Let's see kind of where things go, because I know things are going to get really intense in the next 3 arcs we've got coming, and I'm excited for that. So now going back to episode 1,
For the people watching the scale, that is Snoop Trooper and a half. Snoop Trooper and a half. I'm calling him Snoop Trooper now.
there you go. And so call him TK420. So for episode 1, I thought it was a fairly decent episode. It wasn't obviously not my favorite, but it didn't get me as invested as it got you, because you were ready to charge forward with the rest of the arc. But I'll give it I was giving it 7.5. It was a good starting point. It definitely ended on a good cliffhanger, I felt, because I thought that was a really cool shot to have the blaster bolt firing right directly at the camera.
That's a stone cold Steve Stormtrooper and a half for those watching.
For the second one, it definitely was better, so I'll definitely give that one an 8. Just because I felt like we got more with Chandrilla and the things goings on with Luthen and Mon Mothma and that crew. That definitely helped a lot with the episode. Obviously, we still had Andor doing his fun-loving rebel excursion, so to speak, on Yavin. So, and then him finally getting off the planet, which is fine. Which again, I was fine with that. It's just Chandrilla definitely what made that episode. The final one, where we finally got a lot of emotions, a lot of drama, a lot of story getting pushed forward, I'm going to give the episode 3 a 9, just because I felt like I was the most emotionally invested in that episode. And the fact that it made me shed tears at the end and it had nothing to do with anything said. All it was was the acting of Diego Luna, just having that pained expression, like he's on the verge of just absolutely busting out, and you felt it. You felt it from him. You felt bad for him and the rest of them for losing Brasso, and to have it end there on that pained expression, that just yeah, that just hit me enough to where I was like, yep, these are tears.
All right. We're fast approaching the end here. So we finished Arc 1, obviously. We're now heading headlong into Arc 2. So what's coming next? What do you hope to see in Arc 2? Sean?
Well, um, Jade's in the same room as me, so I don't want to say the exact event, but there's a planet that's discussed in the first episode where a massive event happens on in Legends and in canon. Rebels talks about it, and it's explored in Legends. And depending on how it's depicted in this TV series, could be quite controversial in terms of graphic nature. Um, and I'm hoping we get a deep dive into that event because it's very important for pushing the rebellion forward. And I Luthen can't turn it off. We've seen that. In fact, I would say the further we get into the series, the harder time he has turning it off. Um, I'm curious to see how things intensify on his side of things, and I pray, whether it's Arc 2, 3, 4, I pray we get Mon Mothma calling Palpatine's ass out in the Senate.
Yeah, it's definitely fast approaching. According to the wiki, that event occurs in two BBY, so I think that'd be
Arc 3.
either Arc 3 or Arc 4. Most likely Arc 3, so that
Oh,
Arc 4 is full. So that was my guess anyway as well, that we see that in Arc 3. For Arc 2, my hope, it's very simple. I want it to be Cassian forward. Um, like I've said, for far too long in the Andor series, Cassian has been uh, a backseat character in a series named after him. That needs to change, and I think it needs to change now. The story needs to be more about him. I understand it's sort of become, the birth of the rebellion, but if that's what it was going to be, you should have called it that from the jump, not named it Andor, if he wasn't going to be, front and center focus. So I want Arc 2 to be more about Cassie. I don't know what it is, specifically what events or anything like that are going to occur in his life that make the story more about him. Maybe we'll get the introduction of K2 in the second arc. I don't know. But yeah, I want Arc 2 to be more Cassian forward.
I would say that it's 2025, and if you haven't learned to stop paying attention to Star Wars TV show titles at this point in time, I don't know what to tell you, good sir. You're smarter than that. This is definitely not a show just about Cassian Andor. He's, the piece that really moves a lot of the events in the direction that they need to eventually. But I think this show will continue to be the Rebellion and the Empire show and continue to split two different stories, much in the way Game of Thrones does. But eventually it's going to close down on Andor because I think eventually there's going to be no one else driving the story around. But I could be wrong. Like maybe I'm too doom and gloom about this, like final season of Game of Thrones or whatever. Not in terms of like quality, but like we did the big death pool. I feel like we could have done a death pool for this show because I feel like a lot of people are going to die.
Definitely possible. Like we said, there were some question marks of characters that weren't around, at least in Rogue One, that probably should have been if they were still around as part of the story. So we'll see about that. Randy, what about you? What are your hopes for Arc 2?
So with Arc 2, obviously, it's a year after everything that's happened here in the first arc. So I just want to see growth for the most part. I want to see characters pushing forward, and we're starting to see changes. Like, obviously, I want to see Cassian kind of start getting that gruff exterior we saw in Rogue One, where he's just, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. Now that, losing Brasso, and I'm gonna predict another one of his friends is gonna bite it in this arc, that it's gonna be, we're gonna see the reasons why he starts closing down and just starts kind of like not letting anybody get close. Obviously for Mon, I just kind of want to see, for her, I want to see definitely some more Coruscant stuff in this case. We got the wedding out of the way. Now let's get back to Coruscant. Let's get to the point where she starts to become kind of unraveled as a senator, to the point of like leading to the third arc where she finally calls out Palpatine. Obviously, Sean alluded that chance we might be seeing a certain planet get subjugated, where, the Empire decides, hey, the only good bug's a dead bug. And beyond that, and then, Luthen doing Luthen things, Luthen becoming more unhinged, getting to the point where I almost feel like if he continues down the path he's going, I have this feeling he's gonna get to the point where he's gonna be a liability and a choice is gonna have to be made. And it saddens me to think that way, but we're seeing this. We saw the start of it this arc, and I think we're going to continue to see that in the second arc. Obviously third arc, if Mon Mothma calls out Palpatine, I'm kind of hoping we still get our nod to Rebels, so that at least that's still canon. But I digress. That's 2 weeks away.
All right, guys. That is going to do it for this. It's time for us to say good night, so long, farewell, adios, auf Wiedersehen, all those other ways to say goodbye. Until next week, when we'll be back here again for episodes 4 through 6. Randy, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on X at Gaiety Giles, and as of right now, Sports Brew's taking a break, and so you basically will be finding me here on Tuesdays and Wednesdays while Andor is around, and then clearly just Tuesdays moving forward once it's done.
All right, Sean, tell the people where they can support Fandom Nation.
Well, big shout out to our channel sponsors. Without them, we wouldn't be here. Ryan over at Colleague Nation, Matt, Jesse Storytime Spectacular, and Jason over at Backtrack Cinema, who's doing live shows again. Strongly suggest you check him out. He's an excellent content creator. Just all points to him. And yes, you can join us next week, where on Tuesday we will be doing our we got some Halloween to talk about next Tuesday, actually, and we might have some Crystal Lake to talk about as well, prior to getting to our Andor watch party next Tuesday. And then on the Wednesday we will be back here dissecting episodes 4 through 6. Question is, Johnny, before you take us home, where else can everybody find you other than hating on AK-47s?
Well, you only find me hating AK-47s in Star Wars, where they have no business being, because they just don't.
But it was okay to have a hunting rifle in the original Star Wars. Aha! Aha! Anywho.
Shut up. Now you can find me here, there, everywhere. You can find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/bros before pros. I think this weekend I'm going to be playing some 7 days. I don't know for sure which day yet, but I got a mod percolating that I want to try out, play on stream now that it's launched. It's 1.0 version. I want to play that. So we're doing that this weekend. I don't know which day specifically, but NFL draft weekend, so probably not tomorrow. But here, there, everywhere, twitch.tv, blows before pros. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for watching. We hope you guys had fun. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed episodes 1 through 3 of Andor, if you're watching that. If not, why are you watching us talk about it? Are we just that amazing? If we are, tell us in the comments below how amazing we are. No, but seriously, though, thank you. We appreciate you. Like, subscribe, notification bell, all that fun stuff that helps us show up on your pages and help us with the algorithms, so you can see anything and everything that we drop here now and in the future. So for Sean, for Randy, I'm Johnny. We'll see you next week for another Andor review next Wednesday. And of course, next Tuesday, Fandom Nation Halloween. And we will live watch episode 4 of Andor. So we'll see you next week. May the 4th